One half I, 28M, work as a senior claims adjuster for a massive insurance firm. My whole life is basically lived in the fine print, liability, negligence, and the cold math of consequences. I've spent 3 years with my girlfriend, 25F, and honestly, I gave her a life she didn't have to work for. We lived in a condo I bought with my own money, she drove a car I helped finance, and she spent most of her freelance income on designer clothes while I covered the mortgage, the utilities, and the grocery bills. Things started shifting about 6 months ago. She started staying out later, her phone became a permanent fixture in her hand, and the gaslighting became her primary language. Every time I asked a simple question like, "Hey, what are the plans for tonight?" she reacted like I was a warden in a high-security prison. The midnight incident was the absolute breaking point. It was a Tuesday. She spent 4 hours getting ready, wearing a dress that cost more than my monthly car payment. At 11:45 p.m., she grabbed her bag and headed for the door. I was sitting on the couch with my laptop, just finishing up some paperwork. "Going somewhere?" I asked. She didn't even turn around. She just let out this long, theatrical sigh like I was deeply inconveniencing her. "Ugh, you're not my dad. Stop asking where I'm going." I looked at the clock. It's midnight on a work night. "I'm just wondering if I should lock the deadbolt or if you'll be back soon." "I have a life," she snapped, her hand on the knob. "I don't need a babysitter. You're not my father, so stop acting like you have any say in what I do or where I go." It's pathetic. I closed my laptop slowly. That disrespect wasn't just a sting. It was an epiphany. "You're right," I said, my voice completely level. "I'm not. I'm really not." She rolled her eyes, muttered whatever, and slammed the door. I didn't go to sleep. Instead, I went to work. See, the not being her dad comment was ironic because her father is a man I've bailed out of legal trouble twice. He's a high-functioning alcoholic with a gambling debt that could sink a small yacht. He's also the co-signer on her car, a detail she'd conveniently forgotten, but I hadn't. I spent the next few hours auditing our shared digital life. I'm an adjuster. I know how to find things people want to hide. I accessed the cloud account for her home security system. I'd installed a doorbell camera months ago that she claimed never worked. It worked fine. I just hadn't told her I'd fixed the sink issues. I watched the footage from the last 3 weeks. I didn't just see her leaving. I saw who was picking her up. It was a black SUV registered to a local entrepreneur I recognized from a fraud investigation, a guy who made his money running shady wellness clinics that were fronts for prescription pill mills. But that wasn't the kicker. The real twist was the conversation I heard on the porch 10 minutes before she left that night. She was on the phone with her father. "Dad, I told you, I'll get the money," she whispered into the phone. "The guy I'm seeing tonight, he's got the investment ready. I just need to get him to sign the papers. Stop calling me. If my boyfriend hears you talking about the debt, he'll cut me off, and then we both have nothing." So, she wasn't just cheating. She was using a predatory investor to cover her father's gambling tracks while using my home as her base of operations. She thought she was playing 4D chess. She forgot I'm the one who writes the checks for the board. I spent the rest of the night drafting a very specific set of documents. By 4 a.m., I sent an anonymous, detailed tip to the IRS regarding the entrepreneur's clinic, complete with the license plate and timestamps of his frequent late-night visits to my residential address, suggesting he was conducting business out of a private home. By 5 a.m., I called her father. He answered on the first ring, sounding like he'd been up all night drinking his regrets. "Where is she?" he rasped. "She's out, not being parented by me," I said. "But we need to talk about that car and that debt you mentioned on the porch last night." "I don't know what you're." "I have the audio. Here's how this is going to go. I'm not her dad, and I'm definitely not your ATM anymore. I'm moving her stuff into storage today. You have until noon to figure out how you're going to explain to her why the repo man is looking for that car." "You can't do that." "My name is on the title," he yelled. "Exactly," I said. "And since you haven't made a payment in 4 months, because I've been secretly Venmoing the money to your daughter to pay the lender, I think it's time I stopped. I'm calling the bank to report financial hardship. They'll be coming for the car by tomorrow." The silence on the other end was deafening. He knew the house of cards was folding. Now, I added, I'd suggest you call your daughter. She's going to have a very long walk home. I hung up. I didn't feel hurt. I felt like a man who had just cleared a very messy desk. I spent the next few hours packing her things. I didn't throw her clothes out the window. I bought heavy-duty moving boxes and packed her designer bags and shoes with clinical precision. By 8 a.m., her half of our life was stacked neatly in the garage. I changed the smart locks on the front and back doors. I deauthorized her phone from the home Wi-Fi and the security system. Then, I sat at the kitchen island with a cup of black coffee and waited. At 9:15 a.m., her father called her. I know because her iPad, which was still synced to the house Bluetooth, started chiming on the counter. She'd left it behind in her rush to get to her investor. I didn't answer it. I let it ring and ring. Finally, around 10:30 a.m., I heard a car pull into the driveway. It was the black SUV. I watched the monitor. She got out of the passenger side, looking disheveled, her expensive dress wrinkled. She leaned back in to kiss the driver and then strutted toward the front door like she owned the sidewalk. She tried the handle. Locked. She pulled out her phone, probably to use the app to unlock the deadbolt. I watched her thumb tap the screen repeatedly. Nothing. Then she tried her key. I jammed the cylinder from the inside with a broken key blink. She started pounding on the door. Open up. Why is the door locked? My app isn't working. I walked to the door and opened it just a crack, keeping the security chain engaged. She looked exhausted, her makeup smeared, smelling like expensive gin and cheap cologne. What is this? She demanded. Why am I locked out? You said it yourself last night, I said, my voice flat. I'm not your dad. And since I'm not your dad, I have no obligation to provide you with housing, or internet, or a place to charge your phone. Are you serious right now? Because I went out for one night? You're acting like a child, she screamed. Open this door right now, or I'm calling the police. Go ahead, I said. The condo is in my name. You're not on the lease, you don't pay the mortgage, and your residency ended the moment you told me I have no say in your life. I've already filed a formal notice to quit with the local precinct for unauthorized occupants. Since you've been staying out and have no mail delivered here in your name, because you insisted on using a P.O. box for your privacy, you're legally a guest. And your guest pass just expired. Her face went from red to pale. She reached for her phone again, but before she could dial, it started vibrating in her hand. It was her father. She answered it, her voice shaking. Dad? Dad, he locked me out. You need to tell him he can't. She went silent. I could hear his voice leaking through the speaker. He wasn't yelling. He sounded broken. He knows, her father said. He knows about the debt. He knows about the money you were supposed to get from that guy. He called the bank, honey. They're coming for the car. And the police, they're at my house right now asking about some medical fraud investigation. They think I'm involved because of the payments you were making through my account. She dropped the phone. It hit the porch with a dull thud. What did you do? She whispered, looking at me through the gap in the door. I did exactly what you wanted, I said. I stopped caring where you were going. But I started caring very much about where my money was going. Turns out it was going to fund your dad's gambling and your side hustle with a pill mill operator. You played the "you're not my dad" card to get freedom, but you forgot that freedom comes with a bill. And yours just came due. The black SUV, which had been idling at the curb, suddenly screeched away. The driver had clearly seen enough, or maybe he'd seen the police cruiser turning the corner 2 blocks down, responding to the suspicious activity tip I'd called in earlier regarding a known dealer in a residential zone. She turned and watched her investor flee, leaving her standing on my porch with nothing but a wrinkled dress and a dead phone. Where am I supposed to go? She sobbed. Not my problem, I said. I'm not your dad, remember? Ask him. Oh, wait, he's busy talking to the IRS. I closed the door and slid the deadbolt home. But the drama didn't stop there. About an hour later, the heavy artillery arrived. Her mother, 52F, pulled up in a screeching halt. She's the kind of woman who believes a wedding ring is a subpoena for a man's bank account. "Open this door right now," she screamed. "You have no right to treat her like this. She's a young woman trying to find her way, and you're acting like a criminal." I opened the second-story window just enough to look down. It's not her home. It's my asset. And she isn't finding her way. She's finding other men's SUVs while I pay for her car insurance. "She is your partner," the mother shrieked. "Common law marriage exists in this state. You owe her half of this condo and a monthly stipend." I almost laughed. As a claims adjuster, I live for people who confidently misquote the law. "Actually," I shouted down, "this is a non-common law state for relationships under 7 years without a formal declaration. We've been together 3. She has 0 equity, 0 leasehold interest, and according to the 14th Amendment and state trespassing statutes, she's currently a liability I'm mitigating." The mother didn't like facts. She tried to use a crowbar from her trunk on the garage door. I didn't even go down. I just pulled up the footage of her damaging the frame and sent it directly to my lawyer with a caption: "Attempted burglary/vandalism. File the injunction." By 2 p.m., they had loaded what they could. The daughter was sitting on the curb, sobbing into her hands, looking up at my window every few minutes, probably waiting for the old me, the one who would apologize, to come down. That guy was dead. The final act came via a text from her father. He wasn't begging anymore. He was threatening. "I have photos of the work-from-home setup you have," he wrote. "You're using company software for personal gain. I'll go to the Board of Insurance Ethics. Give her $20,000 to settle the car debt, and we forget the IRS tip." Extortion. The most beautiful gift a desperate man can give an insurance adjuster. I didn't reply. I forwarded the text to the detective I'd spoken to earlier regarding the pill mill investigation. In the eyes of the law, threatening a witness to drop a fraud report is a felony. 2 weeks later, I was served with a lawsuit for intentional infliction of emotional distress and a claim for partition of real property, alleging she had contributed to the mortgage and was a de facto co-owner. Her mother had found a lawyer willing to take a shot at my equity. They filed for an emergency hearing, claiming a legal lockout. I walked into that courtroom with a leather briefcase and a smile. The daughter sat at the plaintiff's table, looking humble in a modest cardigan. Their lawyer started his opening statement about a young woman thrown onto the streets by a controlling, paternalistic partner. "Your Honor," I said, standing up. I was representing myself. "The plaintiff claims she contributed to the mortgage. I have here 3 years of bank statements. Not once has a single cent entered my account from the plaintiff. In fact, I slid a folder toward the bailiff. Here are the Venmo logs. I've been sending her an average of $1,200 a month for living expenses, which she then diverted to her father's gambling debts." The judge, a no-nonsense woman, flipped through the logs. "Mr. Adjuster, these are significant sums. Why were you sending these?" "Because I was under the impression she was paying for her car and groceries," I said. "But let's look at the midnight incident footage." I played the audio from the porch. The courtroom went silent as my ex-girlfriend's voice filled the room. "If my boyfriend hears you talking about the debt, he'll cut me off, and then we both have nothing." The daughter's head dropped. Her mother started whispering furiously. "Furthermore," I continued, "regarding the illegal lockout, under state statute, a guest who explicitly disavows the host's authority and admits to using the residence as a base for third-party financial transactions, specifically with a known felon, forfeits the protections of a standard tenancy." Right on cue, the doors at the back of the courtroom opened. 2 men in suits walked in. I'd invited them. They were from the State Insurance Fraud Bureau and the IRS. "Your Honor," I said, "I believe the court should be aware that the plaintiff's father, who is currently in the gallery, attempted to extort $20,000 from me last week. I have the texts authenticated." The father stood up to run. He didn't make it past the second row before the bailiff intercepted him. The judge looked at the daughter. "Miss, did you not state to your father on that recording that you were using the defendant?" She couldn't even speak. She just sobbed. The entitled mask had finally shattered. "Case dismissed with prejudice," the judge snapped. "And I'm referring these records to the district attorney for review of filing a fraudulent claim and perjury." As I walked out, the daughter caught my sleeve. She looked older, tired, and desperate. "Please," she whispered. "The car is gone. My dad is going to jail. I have nothing. You used to care about me." I looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time, not as a partner, but as a liability I'd finally settled. "You're right," I said, gently unhooking her hand from my arm. "I did. But like you told me that night at midnight, I'm not your dad. And I'm definitely not your problem anymore." I walked to my car and drove home to my quiet, locked condo. Justice isn't always poetic, but when it's backed by a 4K doorbell camera and a solid paper trail, it's incredibly satisfying. If you enjoyed seeing a not dad settle a claim for good, subscribe for more. Unlike my ex's investor, I actually deliver on my promises.